Warning. The following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good whatever it is, wherever you are, universes, or whatever you're watching this from today, tomorrow, any other time in the future. Thank you for watching and welcome. Another edition of Whispered Insights, the best show around that money can afford to pay for. So, anyways, thanks for being here. Today we have a fantastic show. Before we get into it, and I'll make my guest introduce himself since I already screwed this up twice and I don't want to do it again. A couple things about what's upcoming. Next week, we have John Reed. We're going to have a fantastic discussion about getting information to executives. We've been debating whether or not to do this, but I think we're going to do it, and we're going to just tackle on the legacy analysts and traditional analysts and the new analysts and influencers and everything, and how that information gets filtered to executives and what they do with that. After that, the week after, we have Lauren Vargas again. You saw Lauren do a show with Trisha Wan a few weeks ago where they talk a little bit about Trisha's upcoming book. And I want to get Lauren's perspective on what are the skills necessary to succeed in an AI world. Week after that, we have Matt Wilkinson. He wrote a book on uncertainty, and I'm going to have a fantastic, extraordinary, the best conversation ever on uncertainty that you can ever have. Couple things after that, I have Doug Searles, Bob Stutz, and Alan Bergson coming to talk about different topics. Doug is going to be here on the 23rd to talk about something fantastic. Oh, he's going to talk about Clutter Manifesto at 25. Can you believe it's been 25 years since I wrote the Clutter Manifesto? We're going to have a conversation about lessons learned and what happened, what didn't, and all that stuff. So that's the basics. Let's get into the show today. My guest today agreed, because he didn't know any better, to talk to me about what he's doing. And I highly respect and admire this guy. He was one of the people who started the whole conversation about collaboration in the workplace, and he's one of the first people to actually figure out how to make it work. Welcome, please, Dave Hersh.
Hey.
That was wild. Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So anyways, I said that you're going to introduce yourself. I know that I screwed this up on an email with you. I screwed this up publicly already. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you coming from? What are you doing? What have you done? You know.
Sure. Do you want the 30-second, the 2-minute, the 5-minute?
Let's do the 30 to 1 minute thing. Something that
Okay.
Never heard.
Sounds good. Started my career as a management consultant. Really wanted to be an entrepreneur. Moved out to the Bay Area. Ended up founding a company called Jive Software, which we bootstrapped for 5 years. Built out a really healthy business. Then raised money and kind of did the Silicon Valley skyrocket thing and took it to a pre-IPO company. I moved out of the company after being CEO for a long time, right as it geared up to go public, and then spent a few years kind of bopping around doing incubating, advising, sitting on boards, helping start companies. Worked at Andreessen Horowitz for a couple of years as a board partner, and then found a second career in helping get startups unstuck. Initially as a consultant, and then I would acquire stuck startups and transform them into healthy, sustainable companies. And then teamed up with a guy named Bob Tinker a few years ago to do it for larger software companies. Along the way, learned a ton about what's broken in the system and how it can be better, and how to help startups avoid missteps or recover from them. And so I just wrote a book about that called Reignition, which comes out in a month, and am actively promoting the book while trying to figure out my next business opportunity.
So let's talk about stuck companies. So let's start, with a simple question, right? Like, what is a stuck company, and why does it matter?
Yeah, stuck can mean a number of different things to a number of different companies. I mean, there is stuck where you've got almost no runway, right? Where you're about to run out of money and you're going to collapse. You're stuck where you've got some runway. Maybe you have a year or two of cash, but you just can't figure it out. And then there's stuck where you're profitable, but you just can't figure out where to go. In all of these cases, the aspirations of the board and the founders of the leadership team no longer match the reality of what the company is doing. And so it's like they are stuck in an eddy in the river, right? They're just in a whirlpool,
Mm-hmm.
and they're kind of going around and around, and they need to flow down the river, but they can't figure out how to do so. And so it doesn't always mean we're about to crater and run out of money. It can be a variety of different structural considerations, but they all feel stuck. They feel like I can't do the thing I want to do with this company. My aspirations are not able to come to fruition.
But I mean, we live in a free market society. Why don't we just let the market take its course and let the company, goes under? I mean, if for whatever reason, we'll talk about the reasons in a second. For whatever reason they ended up being stuck, doesn't it make sense that the market will handle itself and basically let it go?
If the market was truly efficient, yes. In some of these cases, these companies should die. And you're right.
Yeah.
So I would say if you look at venture capital, they make their money on 10 to 11% of their companies, right? So it's a hits business. That's how they make their money. There's another 30%, I think, that shouldn't continue to exist. Like there's just no business there. But in between are these businesses that actually have a core. They have a real business under the hood, but they bought into a capitalization model that pushed for unnatural growth, and they got stuck because what the investors wanted didn't match what that business really was. And so that was what I sought to help, was this kind of middle ground of companies that have a good business. It's just not a venture scale business. It's not it can grow at 100% a year type of company. So it's like there's middle distance runners is how I think about it, right? Where you got sprinters, you got middle distance and long distance. And middle distance is a very strategic group of runners, right? You're dealing with 400, 800, 1500, these, you have to know when to draft, when to run, when to sprint, and they're being forced to run as if they're in a sprint. And so you're never going to make it to all 1500 if you're running like it's a 100-meter sprint. Right. And the financing strategy they get is pushing them to run really, really fast, and they die before they can really see the business to fruition. And so I think it's less market forces than it is venture capital becoming, an overly ambitious model that supports a 1 out of 10 success rate, and a lot of entrepreneurs believing that that's their only path to growing their company. And I just kind of wanted to expose that for people. I'm not against venture capital by any means, but I am against too much venture capital. And
wait, are you a runner, or were you a runner middle distance?
I am a runner, but I was never a track runner. I was a distance guy.
Okay. I did cross country and long distance, so that's what I'm asking. Cross country is too strategic for me. I don't understand the concept of it is strategic in sports, but yeah.
I know. I like throwing like shot put and discus because it's much easier and you'd be done very quickly. Yeah.
Nice. I got first and second, first in shot put and second in discus now in the national championship in Argentina in high school, but that's because everybody was about half my size. That's the only reason, mass equals push, basically. So, yeah. So anyway, so back to the thing. So then, I mean, it's a question. So then this is a problem with like VC-backed companies mostly, right? They've been stuck. I mean, either unrealistic promises and realistic expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I that's the one that I'm most familiar with and talk about. But there's still a 9 out of 10 failure rate with traditional businesses too. Yeah. Even bootstrapped companies can end up in a place where reality is not matching their expectations. So I think there's a lot of lessons from the book that would apply to any founder, and it can be new founders who read this as a way to understand the missteps that they want to avoid and what gets in the way of success. Or for existing founders who may be feeling stuck themselves, or at least stuck in parts of the business. And I think it's a larger problem than just the venture capital world, right? I think that there's a lot of playbook advice for people that they try to adhere to that ultimately just gets them in trouble rather than helps.
So let's talk about some of the reasons for the book. I mean, why are like the top 3, 5, 4, whatever, pick a number, the reasons why companies get stuck? I mean, I can think of like expectations versus reality, promises versus reality, lack of qualified talent, lack of market understanding. I mean, I can think of like, a dozen of those, but what are, in your opinion, what are the top 3 reasons why companies get stuck?
Yeah, well, let me just research my book here.
Okay.
I have a couple of them, at the beginning. So the first chapter is literally about why you got stuck, right?
Yeah.
And so it's got, hiring the wrong team, which is
Yeah.
a huge problem that a lot of people come to. And there's a lot of, elements to what it means to hire the wrong team.
Yeah.
There is fixating on revenue over strategy. So when you're trying to grow faster than the business really allows, so it's scaling prematurely, really. And it has to do with entrepreneurs, leaders feeling a desire to present to their board, to their investors, that things are further along than they are.
Hmm.
And, when they should still be in a mode of learning, they're trying to scale the business. They're using, a loose set of data points to justify investments in growth long before they're really ready for that. And so I think that gets multiplied often by the board. The board doesn't really know the business intimately. They can't spend that much time on it. And so they're going off of what
Hmm.
they see. And you have this form of theater where CEOs of these startups are trying to present the business in a light that makes it look way bigger than it actually is. And so you need to recalibrate to getting people excited about learning and about what you're trying to learn, as opposed to growth rates and CAC and LTV and things that may be more appropriate later down the road. Losing focus is another big one, where instead of really trying to nail a beachhead market, be the best in the world at one thing, even if it's a small product market fit area, which is the best path to building a great company,
Hmm.
they will oftentimes try to expand to other markets or other buyer profiles long before they're really ready. And that just dilutes everything. It's a peanut butter strategy that often gets masked. The problems get masked by presenting everything as one system, when in reality,
Yeah.
what's underneath that system is you're really good at this one little thing, but you don't know that and you're not focusing on it. And you're going to lose the power that you do have within that target market area because you're trying to expand too quickly into other markets.
Okay.
Um,
So
yeah, so those are three. There's a couple others,
there's
but happy to
so
jump on any of them.
is this about technical founders and understanding business as well, or it's not has something to do with just being technical founders? I mean, you mentioned VCs. VCs tend to fund, technical founders more than anything. So is this that the technical founders don't understand the business, or is it just that
The ones I just
could be
mentioned
anybody?
are true regardless of whether a technical or a business founder.
Okay.
What I've seen with technical founders is the ones that really seek to learn go to market motions and immerse themselves in it deeply do well. If a technical founder looks down their nose at sales and things like that, and they just want to hire somebody to take care of it, that does not work well, because it's very hard for them to oversee it, to manage correctly, to get a deep sense of intuition about what the right thing for the business is. So if
Yeah.
you get a technical founder who's like, I'm just going to go hire some salesperson to go do the sales part of it because, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to get my hands dirty, right? The real work is on the product side. That's the
Yeah.
dangerous territory.
So what's a peanut butter strategy?
Oh, sorry. Peanut butter. That was a thing that I think Yahoo originally, there was a memo in Yahoo about peanut butter strategy. It just means, like, a lot of the work that I do in the book is about the core, understanding the core of a business.
Yeah.
And what happens to get companies stuck is they go beyond the core. They obfuscate the core with lots of bad decisions, like trying to do too much, trying to build too much product, trying to go after too many markets. So the peanut butter strategy is saying, if you're trying to present the business as this whole system, that the P&L, all the metrics, in relation to the whole system don't really tell the story. When I come in and look at a broken company, I try to get through that to identify what is its core, what is its essence, what's the soul of this company, what is it the best in the world at, and everything else. The peanut butter part of it is saying, if you're trying to present it as this big elaborate system, it's like, yeah, you're just covering over all the stuff. You're spreading numbers over, the truth, and it doesn't make sense anymore. The truth is somewhere in there. There's a thing, hopefully, that you're really good at. And this is one of the determinants of a company can be turned around or not. Like, is there a core to the business? Is there
Yeah.
something that customers love that they would be really upset if they didn't have, and where you are the best in the world at providing that, right? That's the core, is that like your best in the world superpower. And if they don't have it, I can't do much with it. It's hard to work with something that doesn't have a core. But I'm good at figuring out where the core is after it's been peanut buttered over with, lots of other decisions.
Do you think that there's companies that have a good core but they don't know it?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So then, that's a good segue to the second question I had, which is like, so what's your role here? You found these stuck companies, either, the wrong team, unrealistic expectations, misunderstanding of the market, not knowing what the core is, not understanding how they're doing too much for the little that they are and all that stuff. And then what do? It's just, you go in there and say, hey, your company sucks, let me fix it.
I work from several angles. One, as a speaker and writing the book, right? Which is, I just love working with entrepreneurs. It's just my happy place. So just going out and speaking and working with entrepreneurs and trying to help and support the system being a little better, a little more responsible, and hopefully a little more successful at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I do consult. So I'll consult companies to give them a perspective on what they should do. And that can be from, early stage, finding product market fit and, figuring out how to construct go-to-market motions around new products, or, offering insights into why they're stuck, why they're in the situation they are, and what their options are for moving forward. And then finally, as I mentioned, when I fall in love with something, I see a company I really like, then I'll go raise money to go acquire it and work with the team to transform it. I don't do many of those. I can only do kind of one, maybe two at a time. But those are ones where I just feel like, yeah, it's like you fall in love, just like romance, right? Like you find something, you're like, I have to do this project. It's meaningful to me. I love the team. I love the space. I love the purpose of the business. Then I would go raise money to orchestrate an acquisition and then work with the team and act as chairman to help them transform it into, the destiny that this company, should be moving towards.
By the way, I think we found your tagline. So that's you should put that on. Should put that on your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, yeah.
So then so then you take over. You don't take over the company. You go to the company and say, let me fix it. Let me find the 2 or 3 things we can do. What's the timeline to get this company from stuck to unstuck?
I mean, they're all different. I think anywhere from 1 to 3 years typically.
Okay. So I mean, I always say that 3 years is a strategy cycle, and it takes 6 months to figure it out, another 6 months to implement, a year to see results, and another year for them to get started, to get settled. So
yeah. Cycles can move faster, like just with AI starting to take over the means of production, and as it starts becoming more of the technology stack, things like, when it used to, like, if you wanted to rewrite an application, re-architect it, that's like years, and it's a huge undertaking. Yeah. I foresee a future where that's not the case anymore. You may have these companies that, their product, which is ancient and thorny, could actually be rewritten, and that could be part of the investment model for transformation. So I think there's things that are happening that will maybe shorten the cycle, depending on the work that needs to be done because of AI, because of just automation and technology changes. But there's a lot of other cultural stuff that goes into it, market penetration work. It just does take a while.
Actually, that's an interesting thought, because if you look at technology advances and how you can build a company literally on a weekend in a garage with an Amazon account, right? For like, it's oversimplifying, but not too much. I mean, today you can actually get an Amazon account, an Azure account, a GCP account, and put something together in a few months and get it up there, and it's a product. So in that new version of the world, would companies get stuck, or would they just pivot quickly and move to something else with what they have? What do you think?
Well, I mean, you're going to see companies get stuck because their competition can build it in a garage over the weekend, right?
Yeah. Well, but the companies that get stuck then are dinosaurs, and they shouldn't be part of the market, maybe?
I don't know. Every situation is different, right? You can see one of these cases. So there's a $50 million company that's got, 2,000 customers. Mm-hmm. And if it's got strong relationships with those customers and is really saying, we are here to solve this problem for you and to adhere to this SLA, and they've got an old product and the customers are starting to know it. Now, if they can build a new product, if they can build a new architecture that's modern, that supports them on a larger scale, or and move all those customers over to a new platform that is much more aligned with where the future is going, then maybe they can do a dive and catch on those 2,000 customers and not get disrupted. If they don't do it, there's going to be a startup that's going to come along and say, we've got a more modern application. At some point, those companies are going to want to switch, and then it probably is not that painful, right? And so, yeah, I don't know. Every situation is different. So I don't like to say systemically, companies that have these characteristics are destined to die. It's really about the people that make up those companies and their ambitions and, appetite for change, and, how modern they are in their thinking and how innovative they can be.
Okay, and then so this is your first book, right? Reignition, the one that you published already.
Yeah.
And then you went out and found a couple stock companies and you worked with them over the last couple of years, years. Yeah. And anyone particular comes to mind that was, that you can talk about, that was like, a great story that like, oh my God, we found these guys that were like, lying on the side of the road in the ditch, and we nursed them back to health, like they do in TikTok videos, Oh, we found this little kitty on the side of the road and look at him now. He's a jaguar.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I mean, there's one story from the book. I didn't buy this company, but I came in to work with them early on. It was a company at the time. It's called Boomerang Commerce. Great company, had built out a very healthy $12 million business, but they were selling to retailers, right? And so this was back in 2016 as the retail apocalypse was happening. And so while the product was really strong and, they had a healthy business and they had raised a lot of venture capital to get there, it was stuck because their market was dying. They were selling to Sears and JCPenney and Staples and all these companies that were just suffering, and so their revenue was dying. So I came in early on, to coach the CEO and to help him. And what we had eventually decided to do to transform this company was to sell off the old business, so to sell all the technology, and ended up selling it to Lowe's, the Home Depot competitor. And, we're able to put enough money in the bank from that sale, and have a lot of the people who are working on that product go over to Lowe's and use that money to fund development of a new product into a whole new category that capitalized on their core. So their core was not the market so much, it was using data to drive commerce decisions, right? And that's what they were really good at. They all came out of Amazon and they were really talented. So they built out a whole new product, which was for brands, similar in some respects, but really intended to help brands sell across marketplaces. And they started doing that before they sold the company. And so by the time, the company was sold, they were able to continue to fund it. So without raising any more venture capital, they built out a whole new product for a whole new market. And, within a few years, were raising at a massive valuation. And they had kind of, within 3 years, which we talked about as the cycle, they had gotten back to where they were revenue wise and were raising at a very high rate. So, and the company's doing great. It became Commerce IQ and was a massive transformation into, a company that could raise hundreds of millions of dollars in a whole new market. So, yeah, that's one of the stories of transformation, which I like just because it took some innovative thinking. So many times founders can hold on to their original vision and can't even imagine that. And Guru, the CEO, as well as the team, was able to say, no, we need to move in a different direction. Let's sell it. And, that takes, cojones to do something like that.
So this is actually what Alan's saying. It's like, instead of your company sucks, it's like your execution sucks and we'll fix it. So do you think that your role here is more of like, going in and spotting inefficiencies in execution and helping them come up with a better way to execute?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. Execution, part of what I do will come into these companies, try to make them profitable out of the gate. Right. By making it profitable, you're buying yourself time and space to experiment thoughtfully, where you no longer have the pressure of money running out or having to hit certain growth parameters. And so what it means is an entrepreneur will go from that mode of like forcing growth on the market, pushing for growth, to a relatively unreceptive market, to being able to listen for the pull of growth. Very
Yeah.
different, right? If you're able to attune to what the pain really is and how you are uniquely suited to solve it, that's a very different place to be. And this is a lot. You'll see a lot of parallels to personal transformation in the work that I do, right? It's
Yeah.
the same work that we go through as people and trying to kind of get past all of the baggage that we have and get back down to our soul, who we really are at our essence. It's similar to a company, right? They've kind of forgotten who they are in the flurry of growth and investment, and they've made a lot of bad decisions that have obfuscated that soul. They've just gotten in the way. And so I come in to unpack it. And that includes selling off parts of the business if need be, just killing old projects, usually includes streamlining the team, cutting the team down to, a smaller amount of people, and refocusing on their core and building an execution plan around that core. So yeah, a big part of this is execution, in that you have to construct a new business that is hyper operationalized around its core business. Let's only do the thing we are best at doing, even if that's small for now. Let's only do that, because in that space, you are at your most essential. You are at your best. The team feels a lot of momentum. They feel good about what's happening, like that you're winning at the scoreboard again.
Yeah.
And when you're in that place, you can start experimenting thoughtfully with growth. You can start listening for that pull. You can start finding the markets that are adjacent, that represent expansion possibilities. And I think that's where real magic happens. And in some cases, you can tap into a future for the business that is more than you originally thought. That there's a big breakout possibility that you didn't even know before. But when you're trying to force it, it's very hard. When you're just attuned to market forces and you're able to accommodate them, it changes pretty dramatically.
So within my ADHD and spectrum qualities, I read through your book as best as I could. I mean, that means I didn't read end to end. Like, I don't think I ever read a book end to end, but I went through your book, and one of the things I actually like is, like, what you call, like, what you just said. I mean, listen for the pull of growth, which I define as, like, don't get stuck on trying to return money to your investors in the way their investors expect. Find a way that works for your business, and find how to make your business, like you said, make the business profitable, and then, like, figure out what to take it from there. That's one of the parts that I love about your book. It's like it doesn't say, oh, let's bring a new CMO that already has experience with you, and a new CRO that is going to build a sales team that is going to, like, 100x the sales, whether the customer wants to give us the money or not, or whatever. But you're saying, like, let's find the essence of the company. Let's make it profitable with that. Then listen how we're going to listen to what's the best way that the market is telling us that we're going to grow, and they go from there. I love that concept, right? And this is one of the conversations we had previous also. It's not a very capitalistic concept, to be honest.
No.
So
yeah, you'll find that I'm very uncapitalist when you get to my core.
Okay.
But in a way, I'm trying to make capitalism better, right? I mean, that's what drives me in small ways. I'm never going to change the whole system, right? But in small ways, if I can help the waste problem, if I can help companies kind of reimagine what a company is, and how it can be successful, and make them a little more enlightened in the way that they approach the work they do. I just love that. It makes me happy.
I love your concept of hyper operationalized. I don't even know how many layers in there, but I can say them all anyways. But I love the idea of finding the best part of the business, and, like, focus on that, and making it grow from there. I mean, how you said a few things. You said, like, reduce the team to the right size, focus on the core and all this stuff. But what is the key to taking a company that's stuck and making it unstuck? I mean, the one thing that you say, if I don't have this, then I cannot do it.
Yeah, I mean, I've already mentioned some of these talks, but I do think the core concept is the main one in the book, which is you've kind of lost a sense of who you are and what you're great at, right? So if you don't have a core, you don't have a turnaround, right? There's no future. There's no second act if you don't have that core. If you have a core, that you have something to work with. Now, how do you streamline around that core, build out a whole new business around it, and be the best at that one thing? And then when you're in that space, in parallel, you can have a separate team. And I'm very clear that I like to keep that team separate, that is responsible for understanding future levers of growth and innovation, right? How are you playing with different ideas that could represent the future of where this company could go? And that there isn't the, painful pressure that a lot of these companies are typically faced with for forcing that growth, so that you can make the right decisions and do it thoughtfully, and again, feel that pull. So I think that's the thing. You also, I mean, to answer your question differently, the most important thing is they have to have conviction. That anybody who's doing this has to have conviction.
Do you find conviction to mean conviction? Let's try that again in English now. Hello, how you doing? Hi, my name is Esteban. I'm an Englishaholic. I love English, but I don't know how to speak it. Do you feel like conviction is part of the what people bring you in, knowing very well that it could be something different than they expect, or is conviction like, oh my God, I'm desperate. If I fail at this, I'll never do anything again in my life because nobody will give me money again.
I think it's, for me, I will come in and say, okay, this is what the future could look like.
Yeah.
This is the play that you're going to run. This is how much capital you have to do it on. This is what the next 3 years are going to look like. Are you excited about it? Do you believe in the company? Can you not imagine yourself doing anything but this because you're so excited to do it, and you have conviction that it's possible, right? To me, that's really important. I wouldn't want to just work with somebody who's doing it. Speaking as somebody who's used to being a hero or a savior, if that's the energy, is like, I just need to save this thing and save these people's jobs and that kind of thing. It doesn't really work very well, right? It's got to come from a different place, which is, I love this company. I believe in what we're doing. I know we can do it. We just need, time and space. And I can't imagine doing anything but this. That's the energy that I want. So conviction to me is most important. And if people don't truly have conviction, it's not worth doing any of it. Even if you have a core and if it's mathematically possible and, market wise possible, if they don't genuinely have a deep desire to be a part of this ride that takes a while and is thankless in a lot of times, and is not like the typical venture backed, I got a bunch of money in the bank and we can have huge parties and kombucha kegs and everything else. This is a relatively thankless, lean, disciplined, austere period of time, and you're doing it because you believe in this company and you believe in the product and the market that you serve. You can't imagine doing anything else. So that's a different answer, and I think it's also equally important.
I mean, do you ever have to tell somebody that they're the wrong person for the job, that they have to, I love the company, love the core, you have a lot to go, but you're not the guy to do this. So, can we find you another role? I mean,
Yep. Totally.
I've done
some where they just move out entirely, and some where you're no longer CEO, but you can be, CTO or head of product or, things like that, where, and, because they've been through a lot, some of them like that, they just say, like, I didn't like being CEO. It was really hard, and I'd much rather focus on this area and would, love your support. And so.
But by the way, if you ever see me as CEO of a company, everything failed. This is like, Armageddon level stuff if I become CEO of a company. Just so you know.
Well, maybe that's just because you don't have that conviction we talked about.
I know that I'm the best number two. I'm a horrible number one. I mean, it doesn't mean that I cannot make the decisions to do the job. I just don't want to. It's not what actually gets me going in the morning.
Good to know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty good CEO, but I'm also,
later
in life.
You did okay. You did okay. Yeah.
And I, now I like being chairman. I love supporting other CEOs.
Yeah. I remember when you guys went public, you did okay, and not just money wise, but the way the company turned around in a very competitive environment and created a message that aligned perfectly with the company and the markets to take it to the right outcome. So that was really well done. So you're better than a good CEO, but yeah.
Oh, thank you. I actually wrote a post on LinkedIn this morning about how, ultimately Jive died on the public markets.
Jive died in the public market. We're not going to do a postmortem here, but
but I wrote a post on it this morning to say it was painful to watch. And at first, because I was already out of the company at that point, I was pointing fingers at everybody else. And then I was able to kind of trace it back and go, I kind of own a lot of the seeds of its destruction. Early on, I brought on those people that, even though they were the ones in charge when it, went down, I put a lot of that in place early on. So my insecurity planted the seeds of its ultimate destruction, even if when I was running the company, things were gangbusters and going great. So I own it. And it was hard to watch your company kind of die in the public markets. But ultimately, I guess your point was, we did well, and it's all an embarrassment of riches. And, it was a great ride for sure.
Was this a genesis of your, like, there's a good world out there for companies that can do better than just going public and making money for the funding partners? Was this
Yeah.
where you go? Yeah, because I remember. I mean, Jive did great. I mean, again, I'm not trying to point fingers. You probably did that this morning, so I'm going to refer people to your post. But Jive did really well post public for a while, but then it became all about, like, growing stock price versus delivering value to the customers, and that's what killed it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And yeah, I mentioned that in the book, right? It was, you bring on people for whom it's a veiled means of wealth creation.
Yeah.
The company will ultimately become that. I'm not saying everybody was, but I think there were certain people associated with the company where it was about money. And anytime money is in the driver's seat as opposed to purpose, it's painful to watch. And, I don't like to be involved in those companies, right? I think money should follow meaning and, why you're doing this, and the context of how you run these businesses. It can be very enlightened and supporting the thriving of the people who are involved.
Yeah. I love this comment from John, because it basically says the same thing you're saying, which is like, there's companies that they're great at something, but they're not good at making money. And they're influenced by the wrong VCs, which is one of my biggest pet peeves, by the way. It's like when all you want to do is take it public or sell it or make money or whatever. But, what do you do? I mean, so you say you don't work with those companies, basically? That's not what interests you?
Well, the ones that try to go too broad, you mean?
Yeah.
No, I don't have a problem with that. It's more like they just were told that that's what they needed to do. The first story in the book is a company called Simply Measured, which I invested in 2012. And they were a Seattle-based company. And it was these really bright young guys that created a spreadsheet for tracking tweets in the early days. It was even 2010, and so this was, Twitter was new, and marketers were left trying to figure out, like, how do we deal with Twitter and getting metrics and know where to post and what's happening, and are we getting engagement and all those kind of things. So they built out a really beautiful spreadsheet, and they did it on their own, and they sold the spreadsheet, and they didn't, they were $600K in annual revenue before they took a dime of funding. And I invested in their seed round, and then things started to grow, and they ended up taking $5 million and trying to scale it. And then, like, a year later, it took 20 million, right? And they, in that process, when you had a handful of salespeople selling, a glorified version of the spreadsheet, they were doing really well. The salespeople were all happy. They were excited. Everything was working. You put $20 million on it. They had to, now it's a marketing platform, and it's, and they had to kind of just expand the reach of it to try to sell into bigger budgets. But this is the peanut butter thing. When you kind of peeled back, the results, because they weren't hitting numbers anymore. The salespeople were not happy when you had 20 salespeople as opposed to 5, and you peeled it all back, you realize they're still kind of selling a spreadsheet, right? The numbers behind it, this is what I'm saying, is the numbers behind it were still representative of their essence, their core, which was still really, they were the best at that thing that the spreadsheet started, right? But they were selling something much bigger and broader, but couldn't succeed, right? Because you're dealing with a bigger market. And so, that's what happens, right? Is that, to John's point, they were getting pushed too hard in too many directions. They had lost focus, and just to grow and to meet what the VCs wanted, they had to play in a bigger pool. But, that pool was filled with competitors, and it was hard to find differentiation and that kind of thing. And so if they had stayed lean, and only raised a small amount of money per the original CEO and founder, things would have been great. Instead, they believed what the VCs were telling them, that they just needed gas in the tank and fuel for the fire, and they could keep going. And but they expanded well beyond their core too quickly, and that's what happens when you try to do that.
So, by the way, the book is, if you haven't, we'll we'll do a little plug at the end for the book, but the book is really good. For me to actually read more than 6 pages, I have to tell you that it's really well.
I gave it to a guy on the plane, a VC, actually. I was just at a conference. I gave it to a VC on the plane next to me. And he just read it over the flight. And I was like kind of nervous. I just kept going like, is it okay? Did I do all right? Did you good? Yeah. He was very nice. But
it's a great book. It's a great book that helps you understand, what the next question is. I have 2 more things I want to talk to you about, but the next question is purpose, right? How do you find the purpose? Not the core. The core is the technology. The core is a differentiator. But how do you find the purpose within the founders? That's the biggest question to me. It's like, or whoever's going to stay, whatever you want to call them, but the people that stay in the company and want to circle around the core, how do you find their purpose? That's hard.
Yeah. The second story in the book is a guy named Jesse Fuji founded a company called Ampush with some other folks. And this was also doing, it was a marketing platform that was very successful and, just really blew up. But he was, somebody who pushed really hard, and he was burning out his employees. He was burning out himself. And, he was coming from a place of insecurity. He talked about having a really hard driving father who pushed him really hard. And he did he went to, Wharton undergrad and then did McKinsey and Goldman. And it was just one of those people. It was like super driven, but the drive was one of burn the candle at both ends and do whatever it takes to win. And it took him going through coaching to reconcile with a lot of those demons and to, approach and to tap into his purpose. Like, why am I here? And I think one of the things that burned him out was, well, I'm selling a marketing platform. Is that really what I should be doing on the planet? And this recognition that it wasn't just the content of what he was doing, but the context, meaning the way in which he treated his employees, how he used the company as a mechanism for supporting the lives of the people and coaching them and helping them become better. That shifted things for him. So meaning, the company doesn't have to be curing cancer. You can actually just think about the company as a means of human development and supporting people and making it a good place to work and helping people live better lives. And that changed everything for him. And so I do think it's vitally important for founders and leaders to have a deep sense of what drives them. What are the things that, beyond insecurities, beyond proving yourself through the business, trying to earn love by being, successful or achieving, right? Those are the egoic challenges. And those are what get us into problem areas when we follow them. It's good fuel when we're young, but it starts to become baggage as we age. And it certainly becomes baggage for companies trying to break through, transform. And so it's a big line in my book that the company won't transform until you do. So facing directly your egoic baggage, what you're bringing to the table that is getting in the way of the business being its best, is vitally important for any transformation. And so I make it very clear you have to do that. And this is a long-winded answer to your question to say that when you do that level of personal transformation and when you confront some of these things, you realize that the meaning and purpose behind what you do may shift. And hopefully it still aligns with what the business is doing, or it reinvigorates your connection to the purpose of the business. But you have to have that. You have to have that deep, innate, this is the thing I'm meant to do on this planet right now, conviction.
So I like the way you say it right now there, by the way, because when you were talking, I was thinking, this is not a one-time thing that you get out of high school, get out of college, and you say, this is my purpose, but it keeps reoccurring as you go through different stages in life and different things that you do in life, right? I find myself at this point in my life trying to reconcile purpose and legacy. Yes, I am that old, So, but I like the way you said, and just like purpose changes. Does the core ever change in a company? Is it possible to pivot sufficiently the technology that what started being a Facebook to rate, how cute people were, ends up being the glue that holds the world together socially, unfortunately?
I do think the core may shift subtly over time, but hopefully it maintains a connection to its history. And I think this is
Yeah.
true of people too. There's a book by James Hillman. He was a guy who kind of reimagined psychology, the world of psychology.
Hmm.
And he had a book in the 90s prior to his death called The Soul's Code, which was about his acorn theory. And the acorn theory being that we are programmed as individuals to be a certain way in the world. Like out of the gate, as soon as we're born, we have this DNA, just like an acorn has the DNA of a large oak tree in it, that we are programmed to be this essential self that is very unique in the world. And then the world kind of shapes us, just like the landscape that tree is in is going to shape the tree and the way it ultimately grows. That we have this coding inside us that is seeking expression in the world in various ways. So I like to think that, yeah, for us, our lives change, we get older, and the shades of meaning that we connect with are going to change and it looks different. But there's also an essential quality. There's something that's been with us since we were little kids. It's still there, that helps us be our best self. The more we connect with it is going to help us be our best. And at companies, it's something similar, right? Like there are what I would define as the core. It will likely shift over time and it has different shading and color, but hopefully there is a connection to the history of the company, that there's some lineage that says this company's always stood for this, and it's changed a little bit over time, but we are really a company that has grown from that original acorn and DNA into this larger tree. So long-winded
No,
diatribe, soapboxy thing, but I love it when a company does have a connection to its history and its roots, and where there's the core is shifted and changed, and we've kind of defined it differently, but there's something there that's always been there in this company. That's the best. You really want that if you can.
Yeah. I'm going to try not to go into a digression on foundational narrative, but Alan is right. I mean, what business are you in is part of the foundational narrative, but we're going to talk about that some other time. But sticking to where you are, I mean, you mentioned some really big pieces here. I mean, purpose, core, passion, reinvention. Do you use a framework? Do you have a framework? Do you have a model, a methodology? Do you have something, or you just basically do it on a one-by-one basis, go into the business and figure out, what lessons that you learn over time, you can apply here?
Yeah, I do have a loose framework that I will walk people through that I'll use.
Okay.
But in a way, it's a framework that says throw out all the frameworks. I wrote a playbook that says throw out all the playbooks, right? So
yeah,
I do like to approach every situation as unique and novel and its own. Again, that acorn, right? Everyone has a unique DNA and a unique set of circumstances, and the more playbooky we get, the more I think we're bound by parameters and rules that will get in the way in the long run. And so I think, understand what the playbook says, but then figure out which rules you want to break. In fact, I just wrote it for I do a newsletter, and I just wrote a story about this woman who's got a company called Jam.dev. They did 7, it's about bug fixes for developers. They did 7 iterations just trying to get a bunch of people to use it and following all the playbook rules. And then the 8th one, they're like, this is exhausting. This isn't working. Let's figure out which rules to break. And they broke like 3 of the big startup rules that everybody adheres to. And it went gangbusters. They suddenly had, they now have 95,000 users, and it just went nuts because they figured out which rules to break. So,
sorry, I'm recovering from this really bad cold, so I just have a little cough left.
Yeah, me too. You can probably hear it in my voice. I'm
By the way, Fisherman's Friend, they're the best lozenges you can never get.
Okay.
Better than Halls and anything else.
That's all right.
We're not sponsored here, so that's just my own person.
Okay, I'm on it.
So I mean, I love some of these concepts, and I love frameworks. I mean, the show started as the hope of getting smart people to put together frameworks. Excuse me, to put together frameworks for executives to make better decisions. That was the whole idea. How do you come up to like a decision point, and what do you use to make evaluate that decision point and make decisions from there. So,
Yep.
I got about 5 to 10 minutes, and there's one more thing I want to talk about. You said that you're writing another book when we were talking earlier. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. And by writing it, my life right now is promoting the book and doing speaking engagements and doing consulting engagements and looking for a buyout opportunity and selling a company. And
Yeah.
it's just like, so the time I get to spend on writing the new book is nowhere near where I'd like it to be. It may be one of these longer writing cycles like I had with the first one. But the thing that fascinates me most is how the mechanisms of competitive advantage are going to change in the era of AI. In other words, as technology takes over the stack, the idea of a knowledge worker goes away. Like, we just don't need people doing the same functions anymore. Humans for a long time have been moving information around, and that's been our primary role. We don't need to do that anymore. And so companies that used to rely on technology as their competitive advantage, that's going to be much harder to hold on to. Once it becomes commoditized and disposable, how do you set up a company to have long-term sustainable competitive advantage? And what I believe is that the humans are going to represent the mechanism for doing that. And so how do you build a company where it is differentiated by its understanding of and support of deep human expression? Right. So in other words, the things that we're going to rely on humans for are going to shift, and the skills that we will require will move towards things like empathy and connection and wisdom and imagination and creativity, things that only humans can do.
Mm-hmm.
How do you set an environment that really gives rise to people being at their best, to developing the skill set, to being the place where everybody wants to come work, to being the place where customers believe in what you're doing? So how do you understand humans, their soul, their desires, what drives them, as the mechanism for building something that matters in this next era? And so that's what I'm playing around with right now. And I'm in a place where I'm just trying to collect as many stories as possible. And I want to tell this book as mostly storytelling, not a lot of frameworks and ideas, but what's actually happening out there and how the world's going to shift through more innovative ways of reimagining a company as a human growth system, right? It's just going to look a lot different. And so that's where I'm spending a lot of time and energy right now. And I hope that it can coalesce into a book at some point soon.
So do you have anything that, like a sneak peek, something that you can share with us? Get a couple minutes, or if not, that's okay. But
well, you can sign up for my newsletter, because in my newsletter, I'm doing a lot of the stories that will ultimately come into the book,
okay.
and putting some of those out on LinkedIn. But yeah, it's a lot of like, how are people doing really interesting things by supporting, the best people being their best inside these companies. And that's just what I love. I find it really fascinating, and how we're going to be forced into that through the use of smarter AI.
Okay, so let me do a very quick wrap up, and then we go into the plug session. But the book, your first book, is called Reignition. I recommend it. I was able to read more than 6 words of it. There you go. See, it's a really good book if you actually want to understand how to make a company better. That's my tagline for it, right? Or like I said before, your company sucks and we'll fix it. But I love the book. I think it's a great collection of stories and frameworks and ideas. That definitely you should check it out. It's on Amazon. That's where I got it. You can get a Kindle. You can get it in physical format, which is what I had because I'm old school. And you're welcome to get a hold of Dave. You're available on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Are you on the former Twitter? No. Instagram?
Not very frequently. No, mostly active on LinkedIn these days.
Okay. What's your website where people can sign up?
Yeah, davehersh.com.
Okay.
HERSH.com.
Yeah. Don't make the mistake of spelling it wrong like some of us.
Everybody does. I know.
So
I should have changed my last name for the book. Yeah.
That's why I kept mine simple. It's just E, basically. You can misspell one letter,
Yeah.
And then what's the timeline for your next book? What do you think? You're going to be spending the next couple of years collecting stories and turning into a book?
Yeah. If I could get it out in 2 years, I'd be very happy. But my life has gotten very busy with a lot of this stuff, and it's all like launching one book is like having a kid, right? And so it's all encompassing, and then it's hard to think about having another kid when you just had one. But so what I'm doing now is, just trying to collect as many stories, write about those stories, and then I'll try to weave them together in a compelling narrative for the future of humans as competitive advantage.
I love the concept of stock companies. I love the the concept of finding a purpose that is not capitalism vis-a-vis making money. I love, like Alan says. I mean, find which rules to break as a first rule of the startups.
Yeah.
I love the work you're doing. What did I miss? What didn't I ask you? What didn't we cover? And we had a couple of minutes to go through that. What did I miss in all this conversation?
I don't think so. I'm
No?
looking for
You're
speaking
good?
engagements. So, it's a really great presentation, if I do say so myself, just because it's, I think, covering this topic from a different angle. And so it's
Yeah.
gotten really good response from a lot of the entrepreneurs I've talked to. So I'm starting to go out and do the speaking engagement, open to, more speaking opportunities. And I just love doing it. So that's a big part of it.
Who's the ideal organization or company to get you for a speaking engagement?
I think it works well. Anything where it's a startup, world. So it can be events, conferences, VC firms, accelerators, and sometimes banks and law firms, folks like that host big events for founders and entrepreneurs. And I can do it for early stage entrepreneurs, later stage entrepreneurs, or even board members and advisors. Sometimes I'm doing talks for people who are thinking about the future of board leadership and how you can be a more enlightened board member by understanding what it's like to be a suffering founder leader, right? How do you deal with leaders who are in this state of being stuck and, dealing with the slings and arrows of a company that's failing? So I just love going out there and talking to people and being a part of the conversation.
Awesome. So I agree with Danny. This was a great convo. Thank you so
Danny.
much for being here. Yeah.
I haven't seen him in a while. I didn't.
Yeah, I know. By the way, he lives like 10 minutes from my house. So, and you probably saw him. Actually, I ran into him at Costco last week or 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
So, yeah. Anyway, so thank you so much. I can never thank you enough. We'll try to bring you back when you're further along in your next Humans Matter book or whatever you're going to call it.
Great. Excellent. I'll be in touch.
Rebirth to stick with the same concept, or
it's called the Eros advantage. Eros being the firm EROS, which is about human desire. It's basically what it means. What drives us.
I thought you went on Taylor Swift on us with Eras tour, So.
Oh no.
Anyways,
to work hard, though.
Thanks so much for being here. This was a great talk. We'll see you everybody else next week, and we'll talk to you sometime later. Thank you.
All right.